Good afternoon. My name is Ed Tyler. I'm holder of the Ellison Chair in International Floriculture, and I'd like to welcome you to the third of our distinguished lectures in our distinguished lecture series related to the chair. Our first lecture about a year ago, I guess, was Charlie Hall of University of Tennessee. Our second lecturer was Ernesto Velez last fall from Columbia. And today we're very privileged to have Jim Prewitt as our lecturer. Let me introduce some people here in the audience. Start with the members of our External Advisory Committee for the chair that are here, who is Director of Texas Cooperative Extension and an ag economist, we worked with closely over the years in various things in various roles. Glad you're here, Ed. Kathleen Phillips of Agricultural Communications, who writes nice stories, Jim. So. I'll stop the introduction. What I want to do is turn this over to Sam Cotner. Sam had the privilege of introducing Jim Prewitt here. Somebody started to clap, did they?
Thank you, one person. On a serious note, it is an honor for me to introduce our special speaker today, Jim Prewitt. I've known for a good while, and I'm just tickled to death that he's here to talk to us about emerging issues. I can't think of anybody better. But I'm going to introduce Jim in two parts, one as a man, one as a person, and one as a nurseryman. And I'm going to do the best I can, to be honest. In all sincerity, I first met Jim Prewitt at a fundraiser in Dallas, Texas. It was really one of the first things that we had done toward raising funds for what became the Ellison Chair. And this gentleman was in the crowd, and we were all talking. We had our program to go through, and my job was to talk about what this would mean for the department to have another endowed chair. And then we got down to the point where we were expecting to start seeing some people wanting to pledge money to us, and it was a kind of a quiet moment. And I didn't know what to do, and then all of a sudden this gentleman who I had never seen before stood up and said, "This is a good idea." He said, "I'm tired of hearing about California and Florida and Ohio State being the premier universities in greenhouse production." He said, I think it should be someone here at Texas A&M. We want that to happen at Texas A&M. And he reached into his pocket and folded out a piece of paper and handed it to me. Well, I didn't know what to do with this thing, this piece of paper, and I just kind of put it away, thinking, and him telling the group that he was going to make a substantial contribution. To me, substantial would have been $500. You know, that was a lot, but we hadn't raised a dime, except for the initial money that the people put into the program. I opened it up, and it wasn't $500. It wasn't $5,000. It was $50,000. And he did that believing that what we were doing is right. And I assure you that he's been a guiding light for us since we started this process, getting us in trouble on occasion and out of trouble on occasion, and we appreciate all that he's done for us. I want to encourage everybody that's associated with this department, the teachers, the faculty, the staff, the students, of course, if they get the chance to tell this man thank you, because he's had a real impact on this department. And the things that he's done will have a long-term positive impact, Jim, and we appreciate it greatly. Jim is a man. And Jim, as a leader in the green industry, he's an 850-pound gorilla. I called him that down in Houston the other day, and several people agreed, and I don't know if Jim would agree with that or not, but he's the 800-pound gorilla in the nursery industry to this day. And he has provided guidance and leadership and insight to our group, to the TNLA, and to the nursery industry for a good while. He started off in the green industry business in the the early 80s, in the landscape, I guess you'd call it appearance business, whatever it is, taking care of lawns and gardens and those kinds of things in the Dallas area. I'm sure he's got a better name for it.
As a yard man.
But he was in that business for a good while, and then with great insight, he went into the wholesale business and opened up his first wholesale nursery in the Dallas area at Garland, I guess, in the late 1980s. He's since grown under his leadership. That his business has grown to where he now has 4 distribution centers across the state and 4 production facilities across the state, maybe 5 now. He is doing extremely well. And I couldn't imagine anybody could do a better job of talking about what we've got you here today, Jim, to talk about than that.
Well, thanks.
Let me also mention, I needed to do this earlier, but Jim, I counted, he is either a member, a vice president, a chairman, executive officer, or something of 15 different organizations now as we speak. So he's heavily involved in all kinds of things. I know he has a soft place in his heart for kids and youth, heavily involved in a program there in the Dallas area. And we just think the world of this man. And I'm just tickled to death that you're here to talk to us, Jim. And I try not to be very, but just
You have. I'm not sure that I knew who Sam was talking about, but thank you anyway. My wife would agree with you that I'm an 800-pound gorilla by the way I eat, and she's complaining about my weight. You know, I left home in 1960 to enroll in Texas A&M, and somehow stopped in Huntsville and spent the weekend and found out that they had a lot of girls over there, and I enrolled at Sam Houston. And it was probably a good thing I met my wife there, so it has been a... but I got to A&M as quick as I could. And I will say this, that Dr. Heiler has been responsible for a lot of my activities at College Station. A few years ago, and I'm going to tell you the story because, first of all, I'm going to tell you the story leading into Dr. Heiler. A few years back, I was at we have a place in Grand Saline where we have a tree farm, and we were having a cookout for a lot of friends. About 50 or so friends were coming out for actually a fish fry. I'd gone to the local grocery store, and they didn't have enough cooking oil, so I had to go over to Mineola, about 15 minutes away, to a Walmart store. And I'm in a hurry. My wife's with me, and she hates to be with me when I'm in a hurry because I speed. And I take a few chances sometimes that I shouldn't. So you young people, you can close your ears. You don't have to listen to some of this. But on our way out of Mineola, after I finally got my cooking oil at Walmart, there was only 3 lights in town, and sure enough, I catch the first 2, and I'm sitting there just wasting time. And I told my wife, I said, when that light turns green and this next one turns green, I'm gone. I'm going through it. Well, it's a short city block, about, I don't know, maybe a couple of hundred yards, a couple of hundred feet. But there's a little city policeman was sitting there. So, sure enough, as the light turns, I take off and go through the first light and get to the second light, and I see it, the caution light comes on, and as I come underneath it, the red light appears. I said, you know I'm going to get a ticket. Sure enough, here comes the little guy out, and he follows me just before we get to the edge of town. He pulls me over. Well, I'm in a hurry. I've already got my insurance paper out of the console, and I drive an SUV, one of them big old ugly SUVs, you know. But I have a habit of leaning my arm on the armrest and driving. It's just more comfortable and so on. Well, he comes up, and he's right out of the I guess the police academy, and he stands about 4 feet behind me, so he can barely reach my driver's license and insurance paper. And he looks at it and he says, Mr. Prewitt, is this your correct address? Yes, sir, it is. He said, why did you run that red light back there? I said, sir, I didn't run a red light. It was caution when I entered the intersection. He said, why were you speeding? I said, well, sir, I wasn't speeding. You can't get this vehicle up to past 30 miles an hour at a couple of hundred feet. He said, you're making me nervous. I said, I'm making you nervous? He said, yeah, you're making me nervous. I said, well, you're making me nervous. You back there, I can't even see you. So he stepped around. He said, would you do this? He couldn't see my arm. He thought I had a gun or something over there. Things aren't always as they appear. So I was invited to turned out to be a private dinner at a home in the suburban area of Dallas one evening to meet the Vice Chancellor of Texas A&M University, School of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And I thought, well, that might be a good thing to do to voice my opinion about a few issues that I was concerned about. So it might be an opportunity to meet someone who could really have a little influence. Well, little did I know that I was the only one invited to this party. Outside the distinguished gentleman over here and a couple of other people. It's what you call targeted fundraising, I think. Ed Heiler has become my most expensive friend. But he has done a wonderful job here at A&M and has done a super job with the chair. And Ed, I think this group owes you a round of applause. And I'm sure that after we get through this evening, I do need to ask one thing, though. Whoever's in charge of this, how much time do I have? 4 o'clock?
Yeah, 4 o'clock.
If I run over?
Go ahead.
Okay.
It has an hour on it, I believe.
Good. We'll run over. When Ed called me and asked me if I would do this, I was very reluctant to do so. I have such a passion for this industry. And I felt like that probably I was not the one to really bring some of these issues to this group, to address the chair, or be one of the lecturers of the chair. But I got to thinking about the emerging issues and the opportunities within the green industry, and there's so many. And it was very difficult to break this down to where we could address this within an hour. It's much longer than that to really talk about all the issues that face us today. So I chose to break it down basically in 3 different groups. There are some congressional issues that we must be aware of, and anybody that's paying attention to any of the media, you're well aware that the immigration reform is very much on the minds of everybody. But it was real interesting back in December of 06, just a couple of months ago, that our state comptroller issued this report. And I want to kind of read this, quote it, so that I don't misrepresent Carol Keaton Strayhorn. But she outlined the effects of the undocumented immigrants in the state of Texas and stated that the absence of 1.4 million undocumented immigrants would have a loss of our gross state product of $17.7 billion. And that was in 2005. $17.7 billion. Undocumented immigrants produced $1.58 billion in state revenues, and that exceeded the $1.16 billion in state services that they received. Now, the report further stated that the undocumented immigrants contributed to the state revenues through sales taxes, user taxes, and other fees. However, didn't say anything about federal taxes that were paid, or Social Security, or Medicare. Now, the report did state, however, that the local governments spent $1.44 billion in health care benefits to the undocumented workers. And because these funds were not part of the state revenue, it had to be taken care of locally. Now, as a result of this, what's happened? You have municipalities now entering into the immigration control, and they're passing legislation locally to address the immigration issue. So now it becomes local rather than a national issue, which I feel like is something that's very wrong and is an issue for this industry, and we need to be involved in it. The the health of the construction industry has taken so many of our workers away. Hurricane Katrina and Rita basically devastated one of my growing operations, not from the hurricane itself, but it took the workers away because of the high-paying jobs to clean up and reconstruct after those hurricanes came through. Those workers have not returned. I lost 35% of my workforce. I can't afford to pay $25 to $30 an hour, but that's what they were being paid to do this cleanup. Will they ever come back? I'm not so sure. But fellows, cheap labor is not the issue with immigration. The real issue is a legal workforce. And until we have a legal workforce, we're going to have a tremendous labor shortage that's going to affect the entire green industry up and down the ladder, regardless of what segment that you're involved in. Another of the national issues that's been kicked around and passed the House, did not get through the Senate, is a minimum wage increase. Now, as I just stated, we're not looking for cheap labor. We're looking for legal, available labor. I took a survey with companies that I do business with from California, one in Texas, one in Louisiana, one in Mississippi, one in Alabama, one in Georgia, one in Florida. Some guys that I know pretty well and were honest with me, and I asked them, what is their entry-level worker being paid first day on the job? The average rate of pay was $7 an hour. After 3 months becoming a permanent employee, because first 3 months they're temporary, they're not permanent until 3 months, the average rate of pay was $7.30 an hour. I took a look at my payroll and what we pay our employees, and we employ about 300 people in Texas. After 3 years of employment, the average non-skilled worker is making $8.12 an hour. Now that's the non-skilled laborers. I don't dare tell you what my skilled people are making. It's I have a healthy payroll every week, and so I bristle when I hear people say that we don't pay in this industry. I've got 9 people on my staff today that have 6-figure incomes. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how many of you in academia are in the 6-figure income. I know Dr. Heiler is. He probably makes, $500,000 a year. But I'm just kidding. I can pick on him. I'm going to pay him back for a lot of this. It's payback time. You're meddling. Meddling? Okay. But we invest heavily into our workforce. And to lose these people who become skilled laborers or skilled employees, it is a tremendous drain on our resources to have to continue to go out and seek employees. And of course, we've been turned into enforcers of the immigration law, but yet we don't have the power to do so, and but we are held accountable to interpret their documentation. There are several tax issues that are on the horizon. Of course, that those of you who are in business for yourselves, and there's several in the room that are. One of the things that we're very concerned about, because the nature of our industry is still mom and pops. It's individuals who own the businesses, the majority of it in the green industry. Now, I'm not saying anything about the larger corporations, but as far as the actual number of entities, it's privately held or privately family-oriented businesses. And the death tax, as it's commonly referred to, is good only through, or the repeal of that, or the modification of it, is good through the year of 2010. In 2011, it's going to go back to where it was a few years ago. And for those of you who are not familiar with the inheritance tax, for those of us who managed to create a wealth of real estate holdings or a business that has some value to it, we tag along with a silent partner in our hip pocket who has contributed nothing to the assets, but they certainly share heftily in our revenues. And they believe in collection of our hard-earned money for redistribution of wealth. This is something that if it isn't addressed before the current president leaves the office, it may be some time before we get this death tax repealed. It's called the inheritance tax. I continually refer to it as a death tax, and I apologize, guys. It's not quite that bad. But immigration is also creating some taxes that potential taxes. There's actually some bills that's been introduced in the state legislature this session already. One of them says that if you hire or you employ an undocumented immigrant, that you'll lose your agricultural exemption. Another bill says that if you employ an undocumented immigrant, then we're going to tax you 10% of your gross sales revenue. That's pretty stout. Again, immigration is not a local or state issue. It is a federal issue. Health care is something that was on the horizon a few years ago. It's continually kicked around here and there for the last 3 or 4 years. But it is definitely on the horizon today. And it has the ramifications of having a tremendous impact on small and medium-sized companies and businesses. Free trade and globalization, and I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. I may skip around a few things, guys, so you have to bear with me. Free trade, that's an ongoing thing every year, and of course the cut flower market, we've already entered into an agreement with Colombia and Peru, and I think Ecuador is real close. But globalization has several ramifications to it, but one of them that I wanted to address just very briefly is on chemicals. And I don't know how much ink that this has been given in this part of the country, not much in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but only through our trade associations and our legislative avenues that we keep informed on some of these issues. But I want to quote this verbatim so that there's no misunderstanding on this globalization on the chemicals. But the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, as it's referred to, is a powerful arm of the agency within the government. They have a lot of authority, and that's the one group of people I do not want to see them arrive at my nursery. Not that we're doing anything wrong. I'm just that I don't think there's a business in the world that they can't go in and nitpick and find something that they couldn't take you to task on. But they have been very diligent in working with other agencies to develop this globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals. The system is aimed at having the entire world on the same page chemically. Now, GSH, as it's referred to now, it's the globally harmonized system. I have a hard time saying that word. It includes synchronized provisions for classification of chemicals for health, physical, and environmental effects, as well as labels on containers and safety data sheets. The U.S. has already approved this. Several other countries have. The UN's put their stamp of approval on this. And the goal is to have as many countries in the world entered into this program by 2008, in one more year. What does it mean to us as producers? We aren't really sure yet. But it may be some chemicals that have become staples in our diets for use on the nurseries may not. They may become restricted. So it's almost like giving up ownership of the chemicals to the entire world rather than just the U.S. telling us what's good and what we can or cannot use. So it's something that we really need to keep an eye on, and it's through our trade associations that we're lobbying and trying to keep an eye on this. Those are some of the national issues in Congress that we should be well aware of and be concerned about. Let's look just briefly at some of the industry issues that bring it a little bit closer to home, of some things that we really need to be concerned about, and it's those things that affect our bottom line. And energy cost is just, it's off the chart. I'm not telling you anything new. Everybody that has a vehicle and you pull up to the gas pump, you know what fuel costs. It's hard to believe that diesel fuel, which is a byproduct, is actually more expensive than gasoline, but it has really changed the way that we look at our transportation cost. Energy cost is not just natural gas or electricity either. The electricity is necessary for everything that we do. That, along with the natural gas, we have to heat our greenhouses. We have to cool them. Anybody that says different doesn't live in Texas. I tell you, it gets hot here, and I know Jimmy Klepak has to cool his houses. There's times that he has to heat them. Same thing with the Ellisons. And that cost is very real, and it's very difficult to pass this cost on to the consumer. So what do? We come up with new ways to heat the houses. Biomass burning is one of those things that's on the horizon, being tested extensively in Michigan. There is another product where they pelletize recycled plastic, and is actually being able to burn this and use this as a source of heating. So every downside that we have, there's an upside to it, an opportunity out there to reach out through research and through R&D and come up with new ways to address our energy shortage. But the energy issue is not going to go away anytime soon. I've heard here recently that there are some people are predicting that you will see $4 a gallon gasoline at some point in time. I hope I never live long enough to see that, unless I have a vehicle that gets 100 miles to the gallon. Of course, Jimmy Klepak, he's got one that goes probably 200 miles to the gallon. He rode in today on his Harley. But I can't deliver very many plants on the back of a Harley. But it's real interesting that all the full-page ads that you're seeing in today's newspapers about the big issue in Texas today over the coal-fired power plants to generate more electricity is being funded by the natural gas people. So I'm not even going to try to explain this. I'm just letting you know what the real facts are there. But I felt it very interesting that you got those two industries at each other. There was a time that the wind turbines were being promoted as a great source of non-polluting energy. But all of a sudden we have lawsuits on the table because it's disrupting someone's view and they don't like the landscape. And it may be that when we quit subsidizing the wind turbines that I think you're going to see a decline in the building of those. How many nuclear power plants have you seen constructed lately? So fellas, yes, just one. But these are issues that we're going to have to keep an eye on, be involved in, and realize that even though you're not an owner of some power company, what they do or the type of energy that's produced is going to have a direct effect on our bottom line and on your way of life. The legal workforce is something that we touched on just a moment ago, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. But one thing that I would like to point out, that I had the opportunity to be in a retail nursery the other day, someone that we supply some plant material to, and it was real interesting. Some of the people coming through that were buying some potted plants and so on for their house, and so I asked them just what they thought they thought of the horticultural industry, how they liked the plants and so on, and how frequently do they purchase, and et cetera. And they said, well, you know, it's quite interesting to them that they could go into Walmart and they've depressed some prices on some hardline goods, but I come into the retail nursery and your guys are inching the prices up. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why, but so many of the manufacturing companies have been able to move their operations overseas or offshore or to another country, capitalizing on dirt cheap labor that only costs a fraction of what we have to pay for labor here in the United States. So it isn't a fair comparison. We can't send our greenhouses and growing operations overseas. So we're restricted with labor, water, fuel, all these things that are costing us like rip. So we have to have a price increase. You know, the estimated USDA, the floral survey of 2005 indicated that we only had a 1% gain. 2006 are predicting only 2% a net gain in products produced. I think in 2005 we had something over 800 growers to exit the industry. Over 800. I don't recall the exact number, but you can look on the USDA's website and get it. That really concerns me. That means that there are fewer of us producing, but we're producing more product. And we're having to produce this product and it's at a higher cost. And so therefore prices are going to have to rise. And cheap products are simply what they are, cheap. We need to, as an industry, stand up and realize what value that we have in our product and demand that price for it. Water management is an issue that's going to be around with us for some time. I never met the guy who said water, water everywhere and not a drop to drink. But I guarantee you he wasn't in Texas. The last couple of years have been pretty tough for some of us in the industry. It has affected my customer more than it has me at this point. But it's going to affect all of us. And it's not just a Texas issue. This is a national issue on water management. There's several things that drive this water management, but population growth obviously is one of them. A severe drought or water shortages is another one. Over-allocated watersheds is another one. We have aging water facilities that we're going to have to address at some point in time. And probably I shouldn't even be talking about water management. I've got the expert sitting over here. But so any of my questions that you have about water, you direct Ed Heiler. But you know, one of the ones that really affect this, that that we should have more control over, and that's the inefficiency of crises management. And that comes down to water districts, or anytime you've got government involved, it seems that the bureaucracy bogs things down, and we do an extremely poor job of managing the crises. You know, we live in an increasingly urbanized world. We have a facility that we just opened in San Antonio, Texas, back in August. I was down there a couple of weeks ago and making my rounds to the various distribution facilities. And Sam, we do have 5. We have one in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Fort Worth, and Dallas. And by the time I make my rounds in that old big ugly SUV, it's 1,060 miles. By the time I go to all of them, I'm growing operations in Jasper County and up in Van Zandt County. But I noticed on my way back, I actually reversed my trip this time and came from San Antonio back. And I could not believe, it was one of the first times I've driven in daylight hours. Usually it's at night when I cram as much in every day as I possibly can. But driving back from San Antonio, it was almost like one continuous city from San Antonio all the way to Dallas. There's getting to be fewer and fewer opportunities to see any kind of a green space or open space or fields. It's just concrete, 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 and houses, houses, houses. Now, am I complaining about construction and the consumption of our plant material? No. Am I complaining about how bad the traffic is? Sometimes, but I know the more vehicles we have, the more houses we have, and the more plants they buy. But somewhere in here, there is a happy medium. And I'm not smart enough to figure that one out. But it is something that we better be aware of and be willing to address this issue, that people want open space. And that's given rise to the explosion of the outdoor kitchens and all the elaborate living areas in the backyards. It has literally been an explosion for my customer. Tremendous growth in the last few years. But who's purchasing these? It's the baby boomers. Well, you look around at the baby boomers, and that's me. I'm one of those who, I want you to do it for me. I'm past that point of getting my hands dirty. Not really, but all my friends are. They want someone to come do it for them. But we've got a whole generation coming up that have the big houses, that have the mortgages up to here, and they can't afford to have us to come do it for them. But they want some of it done for them. So we have to change our way of thinking of who we're going after to sell our products to. The thing about the urbanization is that we're simply have the opportunity to really manage the water and the water usage in these urban areas. And that's where the high volume of usage is occurring. It's not out on the farmland. It's not in the nurseries. It's the average Joe Blow homeowner. And I can't tell you how frustrated I get when I see the word automatic sprinkler system. There is nothing automatic about that sprinkler system except it'll come on at a certain time every time, regardless of what the weather conditions are. Now, we have made some advances and have rain sensors, but I've seen rain sensors that don't work. And here's a thunderstorm and 2 inches of rain falling, and here's a sprinkler system just going. Just the other day, I had the opportunity to see a traffic accident where it was 28 degrees. The sprinkler came on. It watered the one side of that 4-lane boulevard, and a guy in a pickup truck in front of me lost control because he hit a patch of ice. It was 28 degrees that morning. He did a 360, slammed into a wrought iron fence of a subdivision. Guess who picks up the tab? 2 people. The landscape contractor and the homeowner association is liable for this guy having the accident. Interesting, isn't it? We have to start managing our water to the point that it is such a precious resource. I never thought that I would live long enough to go into a store and purchase a small bottle of water, and I'm paying more for this water than I am for gasoline. It is unbelievable. It just blows my mind. But guys, that's real. Do you know how much a gallon of water actually costs now, Sam? You know, figure this out. $1.19 for a little old bottle of water. Man, it's amazing. Makes me want to go into the water business. I guarantee you, T. Boone Pickens has got this thing figured out. He thinks there's more money in water in the future than oil. You know, it's very difficult for those of us old enough to have gone to the Western movies years ago. They used to be about the cowboys and Indians, or it would be about the ranchers who were fighting each other over water rights and grazing rights. It's who controlled the water hole that controlled the West. Well, guys, you ain't seen nothing yet, because as we become more urban, where is the power of influence in legislatures and where the laws are enacted? It's going to be in the metropolitan areas. So we're losing our grip in the legislature, and we need to realize who owns the water. So in Texas, who does own the water? Texas does.
Is it groundwater or surface water?
Surface water belongs to Texas. Groundwater, you can pump groundwater. It's the rule of capture. Now, but if you live in a subsidence district, like I have one of my nurseries in a subsidence district down in Harris County, I drilled the well. I paid $6,000 for a well man to drill a well, another couple of thousand for a pump and motor. And here comes the subsidence district and says, Jim, you can now pump 10 million gallons a year from your well, but you can pay us $150 a month for the right to do so, and we're placing this meter on your well. Should you exceed the 10 million gallons of water, we will fine you heftily. And it is per 1,000 gallons of water I then begin to pay. Now, not only did they place the meter on my well, but by the year of 2010, 30% of my water, 3 million gallons of my water usage, must come from runoff. I must capture my runoff and use that as part of my, and that is really an important, that you get these numbers right, 30%. By 2020, they flip. I have to have 70% of my consumption of that 10 million gallons must come from captured runoff, recycled water, or capturing rainfall. So only 30% of my consumption, 3 million gallons, can come from my well. Now that's in a subsidence district, and there's, I think, 3 of those now in Texas. San Antonio has been that case for some time. We have to pay a whole lot more attention to recycled water. We need to do more research in that area with pathogens and so on. That we recycle our water. We use it. We treat it. And so far, we have not had a problem. But there's a lot of danger in using recycled water, or the potential danger. I have 2 of my 8 facilities. We do not capture our runoff. It was existing facilities that we purchased, and my corporate office is located on one of those in Coppell, Texas. But the day is coming that we're going to have to retrofit that facility if we're going to remain there with the ability to recapture all of our water. That time is coming. That's an issue that we're going to be dealing with from now on, and we best get prepared for it. Texas has created statewide or they're trying to push for statewide water districts, and I know that several counties are banding together and forming water districts, and I'm not saying this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. We need to save the most precious natural resource that we have, and that is water, and use it wisely. The thing that we're going to have to be careful with is there's a definite push toward native plants, but we don't know that, well, we all know that native plants, you know, they kind of get a little bit unruly, takes a lot of maintenance. Not always the best plant to put in the landscape, but there must be a blend of hybridized plants, and plant breeders can crank them out overnight. It is amazing what plant breeders can do. And so there's always going to be a good influx of new plant material, but we need to be careful of, they need to be drought tolerant, they need to be water efficient. So how do we know just how much water it takes for a healthy lower petalum? We don't know in the landscape. But we really need to find out plant by plant or groups of plants of how much water they really use, and then design our landscapes around those. There's several other issues too that I'm just going to quickly skip over this because I've taken way too much time, and Ed's over here getting real nervous. The business regulations it's a continual battle, and the only thing that I can say is that we fortunately have some very good, very capable trade associations, and I mean really good ones throughout the industry. And I really appreciate the fact that they do a lot of communicating between them, and team up a lot of times to help defend our cases when agencies are involved when government's involved in it. I want to touch briefly on research, because I'm going to run out of time here. Research is one of my pet peeves. I just think that we as an industry do a lousy job. And I'm going to be straight up front. As an industry, we give back very little. You take the cattle industry, they have a checkoff system. For every head of cattle that's sold, there's $1. Every time that cow's sold, I don't care if it's sold 15 times, that's $15 goes into a checkoff program, and that money is used for research and marketing. Research and marketing. Now, the wine industry has some type of a program. I can't define it. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm very familiar with the cattle industry. But we tried Tom, 10, 15 years ago, to have a checkoff system on containers. Gosh, you know, you would have thought the entire United States were native Texans. We're fiercely independent, we're hard-headed, and we refuse to cooperate. That is the definition of a native Texan, by the way, and I am one. Ed, you get a pass on that one. But we've got to do something to reinvest into our industry to keep it healthy. And just private sector alone is not going to do it. Universities can't do it by yourselves. You have to have funding. Everybody's after the dollar. Everybody. I get tugged on from every direction every day. The state departments of ag, not only Texas but several states have stepped up and doing a real good job of marketing and promoting, putting some money into research, and we appreciate that. Trade associations are doing it. I happen to have the privilege of sitting on the Texas Association of Nurserymen Research Foundation as a trustee. We only have about $25,000 a year that we can put into research. But guys, it ought to be way more than that. We're just not giving to the back to reinvest and to extend our industry. The one thing I am proud of, though, is that the ANLA, the American Nursery and Landscape Association, has a $10 million endowment, and that generates about $350,000 a year that does go into research, and And that's not near enough, but guys, that's a start. That's nationally. So I did notice that Texas did not get any of that research money from HRI this year. So I'd like to encourage A&M to really look at that and maybe apply for some of those grants next year. But one of the beautiful programs that I like through the USDA, you know, we have to fight time and time and time again, and this is a collaborative effort on a lot of the associations work together to keep the $6 million a year funding from USDA. There was a 3-year program embarked upon. It's a joint program through HRI and the Agricultural Research Service that I think has a lot of merit to it. And I'm going to tell you this quick story because I think it's a way to go. It's what we're needing in this industry, because I get raked over the coals continually about our plastic containers, our plastic pots. And people see them going to the landfill, and they really are. They're filling up the landfills. Do you know the highest point in Dallas County is a landfill? The highest point in Dallas County is a landfill. Isn't that amazing? You know, we probably have one of these days the highest Davis Mountain. I don't know. It's the way we're going. But for quite a while, we've had a fiber pot that's biodegradable. But we never seem to get beyond the point of using it for short-term crops. Now, and of course, obvious reasons is if you use it on a long-term crop, it's going to disintegrate and it does you no good. Well, through the efforts of HRI and USDA, they are researching, it's a 3-year program, on using poultry waste to produce a container that has the same characteristics as a plastic container. Now, these are made out of chicken feathers. But the upside to this is they're biodegradable. So whether they go to the landfill or go into someone's compost pile, they're going to break down. Now, that's some of the type of research, guys, that we really do need that will help the environment, because we are perceived as not being environmentally friendly too often. And that is not always the case. One other thing that's really near and dear to my heart is education. I really believe in education. But I'm really concerned about the sustainability of horticulture, because we are, you look around this room, guys, and there's too many of us who have gray hair. As I told you before, the industry grew only 1% in 05, 2% in 06. To really be a sustainable industry, a growth industry, you need about a 6% growth, and we aren't there. But we don't have the young people entering into the industry, and I highly encourage you to seek opportunities within the horticulture. It is absolutely one of the most wonderful things that you could ever become involved in. And now I'm talking to the young people in the room. But I have a passion for interns. We employ interns every year. We don't have enough. We never have enough. And I know a lot of other companies who would love to have interns. And I know that Dr. Heiler had a program here, was it last year, as part of a cherry initiative. But I like to follow this up, and I know that academia is going to just rear back and say, whoa, we're not going there. But I like to see it become a requirement of a degree program. Now, I know it's a pipe dream probably on my part, but that's what I would like to see. Why? Let me tell you some reasons why. From the student perspective, what better way to have an opportunity to explore employment opportunities with a potentially good employer than through an internship? You learn new skills. You gain needed work experience that oftentimes leads to professional certifications. And believe it or not, it will greatly enhance your resume. Now, you may have interned with someone else, but applied for a position in my company, and I see that you've had a couple of internships in 2 different summers, maybe one with Greenleaf and one with Heinz Horticulture. You bet. That counts a lot for me. And it's going to take an effort between industry and academia to make this thing happen, but the faculty benefits greatly from this also. And here's how. You have a mechanism in place by which you can judge your curriculum. You can assess the value of your curriculum continually. Another great benefit is that you're out there, you're interacting with industry people, and so you're building a network of employers to hire your graduates. Now, you have that in place, that makes you a better recruiter for the top students coming into the university. So it's a win-win. For employers, I'm selfish. It's an opportunity for me to have a short-term investment at a fairly reasonable cost to see if I like that person. I have the opportunity to test their knowledge. We have the chance to review their management skills. We look at their problem-solving ability. We find out if they can communicate and operate a computer. I dare say that everyone can nowadays, far greater than us old folks can. But that is a win-win-win for everybody involved. It takes a lot of money to invest into potential employees. And unfortunately, and Ed's heard me refer to this before, but internships are a whole lot like dating. You know, back in my day, gosh, you ask a girl out, you know, you might go to the movies, you might go to a dance or go to a party or go have a picnic or whatever. You do this 2 or 3 or 4 times and whoo, you're going steady pretty quick, you know, going steady. Man, that's on a ring and going to wear your jacket and all this stuff. But you see someone walk by that's a whole lot better looking, or, oh, I like to know that person, and so you sneak around and ask that person out for a date. Well, what have you done? You're getting to know people without making a long-term commitment. So I think it really is very similar, guys, that let's do a whole lot more dating, you know. I think today you guys call it hooking up or hanging out or something. I'm not sure what the terminology is nowadays, but dating was fun, guys and girls. That was back in the olden days. I'm still paying for it, though. Holy, Ed, Sam took too long. I need my time down. Let me run through just quickly 2 or 3 other things here, and I promise I'll shut it off. There are some real growth opportunities out here for 2007. But those growth opportunities are not is somewhat non-traditional. Contract growing is going to become more and more necessary to survive in this industry. And sometimes it's very difficult to enter into that agreement with someone who you trust and knows has the ability to market your product and so on, that where you don't have that. All you have to concentrate on is growing that product. I much prefer another term, that's called alliances or niche marketing. Alliances offers that opportunity for growers, and this is great for young people entering into the industry. You don't have to be the expert in marketing. It allows you to have adequate cash flow. But let's say that you hook up with someone like my company, and we have several alliance growers around the country. I can't produce everything that we sell, but my group of alliance growers, we can. And we produce a quality product on a consistent basis at a very marketable price. So I'm the marketing arm for all these other growers. That is a growth opportunity in this industry that we need to look at. It increases your productivity. You know, you lower your volume, but you increase the value of your product. You get more for it. You reduce your transportation costs because we're going to transport in full truckloads. And one thing that we're going to have to as far as opportunities, you're going to have to quit hot-shotting deliveries. Deliveries is going to have to be off hours, where your labor is more efficient, traffic is less congested, and accept those deliveries after hours. You need to partner with people who have trucking firms in your area and rely on backhauls. So every dollar that you can save in transportation costs falls straight through to the bottom line. Pure profit. Nothing else comes out of it. Marketing is one of those things I didn't put on this list, but marketing is so key to our business. We're farmers, guys. We're absolutely farmers. We farm in a container. It may be a little 4-inch pot, or it may be a 200-gallon size container that we grow a tree in. But my trees, we have to look 5, 6, 7 years downstream when we plant that acorn. For perennials and annuals, that's a whole lot shorter term crop. So we have a product mix of annuals, perennials, ornamentals, all the way through the trees. There's somewhat of an insulation toward for any kind of a slowdown in the economy. Simply, our product line changes to meet the demand. The demand is going to be there. It simply will turn its head a little bit. And that is the key to succeeding in this business. Now, I got a phone call one day from a guy from a dentist. He wasn't my dentist, but he heard that we move a lot of trees. And so he called me and asked if I would help him sell his trees. He purchased 200 acres out east of Dallas, a prime piece of property. Did it for an investment and was told that he should grow trees on it, put in a tree farm. He and a partner, a fellow dentist, they did so. They invested a lot of money in this tree farm. They did everything right with the book. They spaced them properly. They had on drip irrigation. They had inline fertigation. I mean, everything was perfect. And he was his mentor that told him how to set it up. Was really good at it. I mean, he told him exactly what he needed to do. But there was one fallacy in his program. All he heard was, when those trees get to be 3 inches in caliper size, 3-inch diameter, take them to market. It's not like a bunch of cattle or a bunch of hogs that you can load up in a trailer and run them to market. You better have a market for 200 acres of trees. Well, this happened to be almost 9 years earlier that he had planted these trees. I didn't ask him that over the phone, so I made a trip out to look at these 200 acres. I thought, man, I probably could use some of these trees. Got out there, and he had the most beautiful field of firewood I've ever seen in my life. They had grown together. They were 8 and 9-inch caliper trees and totally unfit for the landscape market. What a waste. Marketing, 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 guys, is so important. One of our real supporters, I want to just include this in one other story. Anna Ball was instrumental in helping get this chair started. I like a quote, and if you'll flip on the back of your handout, I'm not going to read this quote through again or read it to you, but you can read it yourselves. I think it just hits the nail on the head about marketing and awareness of our industry and getting the message out to what we do. And one other story about, you remember that little policeman that pulled me over? I did not get a ticket. He did not give me a ticket. He was so embarrassed that because my arm was missing, he thought I had a gun and so on. But my wife was mad for 4 days. Smoke was coming out of her ears for 4 days. Would not even speak to me. Because 3 days prior to that, she had taken our neighbor's little 6-year-old daughter to school for her and dropped her off. And pulling out of the school onto the street, there was a stop sign, and she looked one way but did come to a complete stop, rolled out, and there was a motorcycle policeman and issued her a ticket. And she was furious. There was no other cars in sight. And it was really a pricey ticket because it was on the school zone. The power of marketing is that I picked up one evening when she hasn't spoken to me. I had an evening meal in silence. And I picked up a magazine and I thought, gosh, I got to do something to break the silence here, so I'm going to read a little bit to let things thaw out. But there was a picture or an ad that really caught my eye and really turned my life around. There was a big, beautiful bouquet of flowers, and then a medium-sized bouquet of flowers, and a real small bouquet of flowers. And the only caption that it said was, "How mad is she?" She got a big bouquet of flowers, boy. Guys, thank you. I'm so sorry. I run over. I apologize.